This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
Congratulations! You've chosen conversations that dare, that go boldly where few will. I am Harry Almey, and this is the Almey Alternative on Otago Access Radio. Yes, welcome back, my dear, lovely listeners. Today, we have a very special guest on the Almey Alternative. She is the local Anglican bishop for Dunedin. Please welcome Bishop Anne. Hello.
Hello, lovely to be here. Great introduction.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for making the time to come on the Almey Alternative. I'm sure you're a very, very busy individual.
Look, yeah, this sounded like fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Now, basic premise, as many of the listeners of the Almey Alternative will know, I, Harry Almey, know some things, but I don't know everything. So we're going to learn together, the listeners and I, we're going to learn together. Mm-hmm.
I probably will too. I'm just warning you in advance.
Brilliant. So you're the Bishop of Dunedin, but you're sort of the Bishop of the diocese. What exactly does that mean?
Okay, so it's a really odd word, diocese, but it refers to a certain region of the country and all the churches, Anglican churches that are within it. So our diocese goes from Waitaki all the way down to Rakiora.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Otago Southland.
Otago Southland, yeah.
Blimey, that's a bit of land to cover.
Oh, look, it's a bit of land to cover, but what a glorious land to cover. Yeah, I mean, part of my job is driving across some of the most beautiful country in the world, I think. So it's pretty good.
Yeah. No, it is a beautiful sight. Yeah, I was having a look at parts of your career before this podcast, and goodness me.
It's a mixed bunch of things, isn't it?
It involves lots of travel.
It involves lots of travel, a lot of countries, yeah.
Born South Africa, teached in Australia, Zambia, South Africa. I mean, Australia specifically, the Northern Territory, which is also quite large.
Yeah, so I wasn't actually teaching there. I was teaching, but not in a school there. I was doing kind of education for churches there. So I taught in Zambia, and I taught in South Africa, and I taught in Australia.
Fantastic.
Outback Australia rather than Darwin.
And what were you teaching in these places?
So I trained as a special needs teacher. I thought I was training as a special ed teacher, and I wanted to use music in special ed. I had a kind of particular fascination with the use of music for children in particular who were kind of down the severe profound end of disability, whatever we are now calling it. And so I started a special ed diploma, and it was the first year they'd offered it. And halfway through the year, they said, actually, we can't do this in a year, so we're going to turn it into a primary school special needs course, which I wasn't at all interested in, really. And so I ended up instead teaching secondary school in Zambia. Yeah.
With such a well-travelled story before here, I suppose the question I have is, how was it that you happened to arrive in Dunedin? What brought you here to our sunny city?
Well, New Zealand came about because we were living in Canada at the time, and my mother, who is Zambian and had grown up there, really didn't like the commercialism, the glitz, everything else of that country in comparison to the land she'd grown up in. And my father, who's a doctor, got a letter from someone from Stratford in Taranaki, a doctor there, and it sounded like a beautiful little quiet backwater. And so they decided we'd stop over here on our way back to Africa, and they loved it so much they stayed. So that's how I kind of began. That's how I came to feel as if I was a Kiwi. Lived in New Zealand till secondary school, did all my primary schooling here, and married someone who similarly had kind of bounced between Australia and New Zealand and Africa. But heart was always in New Zealand, so we ended up back here. And then you kind of go where you feel God's pushing you, and we ended up in Dunedin, and very glad to be here.
Fantastic. A classic story of coming to New Zealand. As a slight tangent, I have a special request from those near and dear to me to ask about, because you're here in resplendent purple, which I think I'm a big fan of fashion. I can appreciate game when I see it. But I think there was a specific question asked to me about the significance of the colour, which is purple, and why the collar, because I imagine... The question that was said to me was that oftentimes bishops are wearing a collar, and why that was the case.
Yeah. Look, there are two ancient traditions that are way out of date and have completely lost their original meaning and now are simply worn because that way people recognise who you are. Purple was back in the bad old days where bishops were right up there with princes and therefore had to kind of wear a royal sort of colour. I'm sure there can be some listeners who write in and correct everything I've said, because for just about everything that you find in the church in terms of tradition, you can find 50 different reasons why. So that was that. And then the collar, I'm fairly sure, is a hangover from the academic, the little white tag people used to have around their necks. I'm gesturing here, which is not a huge amount of use on a radio. White tags around their necks to show that they were kind of a scholar, a clerk. And this is a hangover from that.
Oh, fantastic. Very interesting. And do you have the, I think I was told that sometimes bishops had a classic ring of some sorts, but I'd never seen.
No.
I'd never seen the sort.
You can choose your own ring, and mine is extremely understated. Yeah, it just looks this looks like a wedding ring.
Modest. So just starting with your journey to your position, which you will soon be celebrating your second anniversary in the position, I think, because you were sort of early December 2024.
Close March, I think it was. So yeah, 1.5 years through. Yep.
When was it you joined the ecclesiastical hierarchy? I think is the way of way of putting it.
As in when I became a bishop, or was there something behind that? Okay, when was I ordained? When did I start working for the church?
Because there could be two questions. The first question could be when did you think at any age I'm religious, and the other question is because there's a lot of religious people who don't follow your path. Yeah, and I'm curious about both, but principally the second. Okay.
Well, I mean, I remember making an extremely sincere commitment to God when I was about 7. And that kind of went up and down a bit. But I started learning the pipe organ. I was Presbyterian growing up, and I started learning the pipe organ, and it so happened that the local pipe organ was in an Anglican church. And so I got to know the Anglican way of the liturgy, the kind of the rhythm and the words and the music, which I just loved. But I wasn't kind of particularly Anglican until I was living in South Africa and got involved in Cape Town Cathedral in the build-up to the first election. And my God, I mean, that was such an exciting time to be part of a church anywhere, because they were so practically active in the change that happened in that country. They were right at the heartbeat of everything that was going on. And towards the end of that year, I got what felt like the only kind of clear kind of blast from heaven about what I was supposed to do, and that was to go back to Australia and study to be a priest. I still was Presbyterian at the time, and my family were a little bit shocked that I would suddenly drop my teaching, which I loved, and head off and decide to become an Anglican priest. But never regretted it. Yeah.
I'm very curious. Do you want to expand upon that, as you put it, blast from God?
Yeah, I'm very happy to. So I was teaching in South Africa. I was weighing up whether to stay there or to go back to Zambia, where I had been teaching before, which I just loved. But the current job I was in had ceased. It was just a maternity leave thing. I've been offered another, and I just was I have no idea what I'm supposed to do next. There was pressure from Zambia to go back there because they were having difficulty finding someone to replace me. And, often when I speak to people, it's when you get to the point of, okay, I give up God. I've got no idea what I'm supposed to do here. Whatever you want me to do, I will do. that things become clear. And I had a very clear voice in my head. You know, it's easy as, I mean, there's no other way of putting it. It wasn't exactly that, but that I was to go back to Australia and study for the priesthood. And with it came this amazing sense of euphoria that this was exactly right. And that kind of carried me through everyone's cynicism, kind of, how long have you been thinking about this? Well, 2 days, you know. But I know it's what I've got to do. So it's not the sort of thing that happens very often, but sometimes it does.
Yeah, fantastic. You never quite know. So you finish your studies and you become a deacon in 1996. Is that correct?
Wow, you know better than I do. I can never keep track of my own dates, so probably that. Yeah.
And because what I'm angling at here is the deacon sort of your first point of entry into working at the church? In
the Anglican Church, if you're what they call ordained, which basically means that the church is saying, okay, you've got our authority to do these things in our name, is kind of what it boils down to. And you are a deaconed first, and some people, I wish there were more, stayed deacons. The role of a deacon is one of service, essentially, and to be a bridge between the church and the community. So, deacons who stay deacons, they'll be working in the community, probably more than they'll be working in the church, but they'll be making a kind of bridge between the two. Now, priests have to start off as a deacon because you've got to learn to do that, and you've got to remember that you always got that as part of who you are. So some people stay deacons. If you feel that your calling is a bit different to that, then you might be chosen to be a priest, and so then you can be ordained priest. And then, bishop is they're kind of different roles. It's although it looks like a hierarchy, it's more you're just called to do different things.
No, thank you for that, because I've prepared these questions, and I remember thinking, there has surely had to be a better way of asking that question besides
that's good.
What's the job ladder? Because which is the sort of, I think, the layman's in other circumstances.
I know. It's in the church of all places, it should not be a ladder. Well, Jesus makes it pretty clear that the first will be last and the last will be first, and that, you are always supposed to be seeking not to put yourself forward and not to climb. And so, although in practice I have a certain degree of authority over the priests in my diocese, it's actually fairly limited authority. It's kind of the authority that they grant me to have, and most decisions have to be made by a council rather than by me. It's a bit different from the Catholic Church. I think they have a bit more say. The bishops tend to. We tend to work far more as in as flat a manner as we can, I guess. Yeah.
So from deacon to priest to bishop, and becoming the bishop, I mean, I don't know how you'd characterise it, being chosen by God, or there was an election. Was there a selection by the
and you kind
priests?
of hope that the people who are doing the selecting are listening to God. It's kind of, I do believe they were. So yes, you have to be elected. You don't put your own name forward. And then that goes to what we call a synod, which is a gathering of clergy and lay people. And they go through a process of trying to discern who they think should be in that position.
Fantastic. It reminds me of the noble old tradition of selecting a speaker in Westminster democracies, where they elect them, and they're very happy to take the role, but they sort of take them by the arms and quote unquote force them to the chair.
Quite that.
Do you have a chair? Bishop's chair?
I do. There's a thing called a cathedra, which is where we get the word cathedral from. Ooh. So it's in the cathedral. I'm hoping in the Octagon, that beautiful big cathedral. In actual fact, it was built for men, so my feet don't touch the ground, but it's there.
and just on that point of authority, how would you characterise the authority you do have? Sort of a guidance for the other priests, or in some other way?
It varies a lot. I think the main thing is that in a lot of things, the buck stops with me. So however many people are involved in a decision, if the decision is wrong, it's my problem in the end. So a lot of that stuff happens. I try to work with people than come over them. But
fair enough.
Yeah. It's hard to describe, really. You have to kind of be in there to know it, but yeah.
As is the case with many organisations, I think.
Exactly.
Bishop of Otago and Southland. We touched on it a little bit at the start. I've known many people with responsibilities of quite large sizes, and I always ask them, "How do you manage it?" In terms of time, in terms of petrol costs, in terms of having to be across the board on details, it must be a bit tough.
It is. I have what we call archdeacons, and those are priests who kind of have oversight of areas within that. So, have one for North Waitaki and one for Upper Clutha, one for, and for Central and South. So I've just come straight from a meeting with them. So they kind of feed me back essentially what's happening in all those different places. And then I try to get around all my churches. Probably it takes about 18 months to get around all of them on a Sunday. So I try to do that, and we keep in contact any way we can.
So you do travel quite regularly around the area.
Try to, yeah.
Fantastic. This is more of a personal curiosity, but obviously there's probably communities in Invercargill, Gore, Queensland.
In Queenstown,
in Queenstown.
Yeah, you just went over to Australia.
Always get them mixed up. Always. That's my.
But there are churches in Queensland too. Yeah.
Is there a sort of an underrated Anglican community in sort of perhaps one of the smaller towns that you really?
Oh,
I know that.
That sounds like I'm playing favourites.
It does risk it. Oh.
Yeah, that is a really. I mean, any and all the communities are doing amazing things in their own way. Heavens, how to start? You'll find that there's one community that's running a soup kitchen every week. So Gore, they do a soup kitchen every week. You've got it's All Saints here, which runs fruit and veggie, kind of organises a fruit and veggie program so that people can access their vegetables more cheaply. You've got churches that are, really integrated with the community and so aware of what's going on there. You've got one up in Oamaru there. One of the churches there is running a literacy program for the kids in the community. There's just such a variety of stuff that's going on.
You touched on. I mean, this is an excellent thing from the start. You touched on being, I suppose you say, raised Presbyterian, and then moving over to Anglicanism. For a lot of listeners, they'll be sitting there asking themselves, I know what Anglicanism. It's a word I've heard. I know it's a religion, but what precisely is it? And you've done the study. We can't trace thousands of years of history in a brief podcast. But what is Anglicanism, especially versus sort of other sects?
So for about 1,500 years, there was. There were kind of essentially two branches of the church. For 500 years or so, there was only one. But the Eastern branch, to the Orthodox churches, and the Catholic Church. And then when we got to around 1500, the people like Martin Luther came up, and a lot of people started questioning what was going on, and a lot of the traditions had become a bit entrenched, and all that stuff. The Catholic Church was shaking itself up already, but there were a bunch of people who thought they weren't shaking themselves up fast enough. And so on the continent, Luther, none of them actually wanted to start a new church, but it just kind of ended up happening that way. So we ended up with the Lutherans, so Martin Luther, and then you had a guy called John Calvin who started a kind of Calvinist branch of the church, of which the Presbyterians kind of are an offshoot of that. Meanwhile, in England, there were a group of people who were trying to make the Church of England more Protestant, and so they cashed in on Henry VIII's desire to, divorce and remarry. He kind of really stayed Catholic all his life, but wanted to break from the Pope, and so, the Protestants got working and they got this kind of independent church, which changed shape hugely over the next century or so as different kings and queens came in. But I would say Queen Elizabeth, by the time we got to her, we kind of had an Anglican church, a Church of England. And what set it apart was that it was kind of one foot in the Catholics and one foot in the Protestants, and stayed that way. So we have a lot in common with the Catholics. We say we have a liturgy each week, which just means that we have a kind of rhythm of worship that stays the same. We use words and prayers that have been used for 1,000 years. And we are Protestant in as much as we've got quite a lot of flexibility in that as well. And some of our churches probably look more like a Baptist church than anything else. So Anglicans are a bit of everything. We say we've got a big tent. Yeah.
And you mentioned the Church of England there.
It's the same. Church of England is the English bit of the Anglican, worldwide Anglican Church.
Yes. So the Church of New Zealand is autonomous, independent of the original Mother Church?
Yeah. Well, see, this is a debate at the moment, but all the Anglican churches and Episcopalian churches that are part of what we call the Anglican Communion choose to be part of that communion. And they say that, we are connected by our shared history, and we choose to be part of this communion. And as you know, some churches that were part of that communion have decided to step out and no longer be part of it. So it's a kind of voluntary thing. Yeah.
And Dunedin's been a bit of a trailblazer in sort of, how do you say, recent history, going back, say, 100 year, with the first consecrated female diocesan bishop. Fantastic.
Yeah, you've really done your homework. Well done. Penny Jameson.
Yes.
So there'd been a couple of women bishops who were assistant bishops, but she was the first one who actually had this whole diocese under her care. So that was trailblazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you were the second female bishop and the 11th. So fantastic.
Okay.
You mentioned about the Anglican Communion, and you mentioned about some people choosing to leave. And of course, some listeners may be aware that was essentially a worldwide row within the Anglican Communion over the elevation of a female Archbishop of Canterbury, the sort of, you'd say, first among equals, titular head of the worldwide Anglican Church. Do you have a view on that particular ruction?
Look, any ruction is sad. Any ruction within the church is particularly sad because it means that the foundation of everything for the church is God, and the message of God revealed through Jesus is unchanging, and that's what holds us together. But what happens is that ways of understanding that reality can become really important for some churches, and ways in which we live while we're understanding that reality can become really important. And so, there have been debates over whether people who are divorced can be ordained, people who are divorced can be remarried. There have been debates over whether women should be in leadership in the church. There are currently still, unfortunately, debates over whether we should be blessing same-sex marriages. All these things are kind of one step removed from the core and the centre. And so when we split on those things, I think that's really sad. So the church is breaking away because of the Archbishop of Canterbury. That was kind of the final straw. They had been murmuring and talking about irreconcilable differences for quite a long time. And I think that was just the catalyst. Catalyst. And it is really sad.
I think the churches in particular are mostly the African ones. Is that correct?
Well, some of the African ones. Sydney Diocese in Australia is a big driver behind it. It's not as many churches as you might think from the publicity. Yeah,
the headlines.
So I last year I was at 10-day gathering with bishops from Kenya and Tanzania and Malawi and South Africa, and they had no problem. And Zambia also, I know, has no problem. So, yeah.
Yeah. And just to what you were saying, because that was very interesting to listen, but I just want to be absolutely sure I understand it.
Yeah.
When you say like one step removed from the core of sort of like God's mission, do you mean it's a core component, or it's sort of taking a step away? Is it? Do you mean it's like a core component to have these evolving, changing debates, or that the ructions are sort of moving us away from that core of God's mission?
I think whenever the focus becomes on the thing that's causing the division rather than on God, well, then we're moving away from the core of what we're supposed to be on about. Because I think what's Christianity, what our faith is based on, is something that God has done. It's not based on whether I do everything right or not. So, yeah, I think when the focus becomes on things that I can point at you and say, well, I don't want you as part of this community, then that's just tragic, because anyone who reads the New Testament, the whole New Testament, everything the Apostle Paul writes, is about gathering in those people who used to be ostracized because they were, unclean. There were all these people out there who didn't know how to behave the way Jewish people behaved. It was all about the shock that God's love keeps getting bigger and we keep understanding it as getting bigger. It always was that big. But gradually, the circle of those who are encompassed by the love of God gets broader. And every time that happens, we resist it, because we're human beings, and all human beings have this inner satisfaction of being able to say, I'm right and you're not. So, yeah.
Very, very moving. My final question on this subject before we move on. As you've highlighted, it's particular churches. It's not like a mass of churches. But regarding the challenges, sort of the opposition to the elevation of women to the leading roles, do you feel those challenges still exist in New Zealand? That sort of medieval sentiment?
I have a huge lot of respect for those people who find it a problem, because they are sticking to their guns. They're sticking to how they believe the Bible should be interpreted, essentially. So the issue isn't so much women. The issue is how people read and understand the Bible. That's the core layer. So I've now forgotten your question.
If you felt that those challenges still existed.
They do. Yeah, they do. Not as much in New Zealand as they do in some other parts of the world, but there's still people who are really uncomfortable if women are in leadership. And yeah, that's a matter of I look at the Bible and see that Paul chose women to lead in the early church, and I look and I see that God chose women to be the first announcers of the resurrection. And so I think, I don't know that we're in a position to say no.
Fantastic. You mentioned in the previous bit we were talking about the need to sort of just open church, broad church, bringing people to, I can't say it anywhere, they're the bosom of the church. When I've been talking and preparing for this interview and talking to people, some people are under the impression that one of the growing sort of difficulties facing the local Anglican church is that the congregation is growing older and older and sort of declining.
Yeah.
What is the church doing in terms of its youth outreach, and what is your approach to youth outreach? I suppose.
Yeah, if there was a silver bullet, obviously everyone would be doing it. It doesn't quite work that way. Because we could jump through hoops and be as entertaining as we like, and doll out pizza and do everything, and that wouldn't again hit the core, which is people being touched by God, and in the end, only God can touch people in that way. However, we can try to make it easier, I guess, for people. I'll just say, at the moment, post-COVID, we slumped. All the churches did. It was all this thing about gathering together. Across New Zealand, there seems to be a sign that things are going up again. And in a number of places in the Western world, it's the most notable growth is young men, about your age, probably. And weirdly, a lot of that seems to be happening not because people are going out, but because they're looking for something, and they're coming into the Orthodox churches and the Catholic churches and the kind of more Catholic of the Anglican churches, where there's liturgy and rhythm and mystery, and that almost seems to be one of the things people need right now. So it's hard to be sure what God's going to do next, essentially.
And just to understand what sort of services the Anglican Church, like in terms of a Sunday service and stuff. What services does the local Anglican Church do? Just a Sunday service, or? Yeah,
some of them do services during the week. There's a Taizé service in the evenings in a couple of places, including All Saints up by the university, and that's just a really quiet, beautiful music and prayer and meditation type stuff. There are churches that have meditation sessions over lunch. So there's a variety of stuff going on. But Sunday morning's the main time we get together. Yeah,
I love. This is the third time. I love how in your description of what the church is and sort of your enjoyment of it, you're constantly brought back to that to music, to liturgy, to the rhythm.
Music was my undergraduate degree, so
that thing. Yeah,
it's probably it's in my heart,
close to your heart. The sort of the rhythm of it and the meditations. Yeah.
Well, I think music is one of the many ways in which God reaches us. It kind of it slips past barriers we might put up and goes straight to our hearts. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I talk all the choirs of Dunedin. They're all very lovely. Yeah. And on the flip side, in terms of other services of the church, when I posed that not open question about your quote unquote favourites, which was not the intention, but in terms of Dunedin specifically, what are the the charitable services the Anglican Church engages in?
I think I'd probably rather start broader than Dunedin and come down, because I think a lot of people are unaware that things like the city missions in Auckland and Wellington and Christchurch are Anglican. And we've got Anglican Family Care here, and we've got South Centre down in Invercargill. There are a number of big things that the Anglican Church has been part of starting, and a lot of them then kind of get so big that they branch off and kind of be their own entities. So we kind of, on one level, we work on that sort of level with nursing homes, retirement homes, and that sort of level of care. And then you come down to just the practical stuff that happens in churches. And so there's things like Friday Light. The two churches in town that on a Friday night will put on a meal, and just anyone who wants to wander in, who might do with that meal and that fellowship, they come together and just have a really relaxed time, chatting and singing and praying. So that happens there. We have food banks. We have, as I say, soup and buns for people. There's all sorts of small things that people do on that level. And then there's just the company and the visiting and the linking and looking out for people who are suffering and heading out there and making sure they're not alone. So, yeah, it happens on an awful lot of levels.
Fantastic. A lot going on, and a lot you don't see, but very, very important work.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've often been thinking about in the preparation for this interview is the sort of fine line between the sort of temporal sort of world of commentary and, as you said, headlines that slightly go, oh my goodness, this massive organisation, and the spiritual world. And recently, much to my alarm, this is different church, but the Pope released an encyclical on AI of some great depth and intellectual quality. And I suppose my question is, in your role, are you often called upon, or do you comment on sort of more worldly matters?
Well, can I first ask, why did that alarm you?
I think, again, being a young person, you sort of are slowly moving through the branches and sort of realizing more things. I'd not in my lifetime known a pope to make an intervention that was it sort of felt a bit off the beaten path. It wasn't spiritual, to my mind at least. It wasn't about the poor. It was about something which to me had been so strictly the domain of worldly figures.
And yet AI hits right at things which concern humanity and therefore would concern the church, because it raises questions about what a human being is. And, that's very much a deep existential sort of question. And essentially anything which we feel might reduce life in any way or make us less like the image of God, which is, the kind of central thing, then we would need to speak out against that. As I say, I really got involved in the Anglican Church in South Africa, and there was this issue of justice, which was highly political, but it was also a justice issue and therefore something that Christians need to be involved in. We couldn't just sit back and let this injustice continue. And so the people of the cathedral in Cape Town put their bodies on the line sometimes in order to try to fight the injustice. And it's always been the case. In Northern Territory, when I was living there, the Indigenous communities there have endured so much from the invaders, but at a point where there were farmers coming up and shooting Indigenous people. There were missionaries there who were standing between the guns and the Indigenous people to stop it happening. So, the church has always been at the forefront of political issues and justice. When those political issues are justice issues, I don't think the church can ever say, I belong to this political party.
No.
That's just dangerous. That's just, But when issues come up which can affect the vulnerable, and particularly, or which threaten the humanity of human beings, then absolutely we need to speak out.
Fantastic.
Mostly we won't be listened to, but we still need to speak out.
I'm sure a lot of pull in the community. I'm sure a lot of esteem though.
No.
Well, thank you for that sort of different perspective. I suppose I shan't be surprised the next time the Pope intervenes on fiscal policy.
Well, can I just go one more level?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So the heart of Christianity is that that God revealed Himself, became human in Jesus. And therefore, the whole thing about it being spiritual, not physical, not material, not earthed, is blown out of the water, because it is absolutely earthed. And Jesus was absolutely concerned with ordinary earthly problems and the people that He encountered. And therefore, the church has to be that. If we start just being airy-fairy and up in the air and spiritual without those groundings, then we've lost our way.
If you had a piece of paper in front of you and the title said encyclical, here you go, Bishop. Lovely Bishop. Yeah. You can write whatever you like about justice issues, sort of within the boundaries of your diocese. What pops first to your head in terms of a justice issue these days?
Okay, I wonder. I think actually AI is way up there, because I think it is one symptom of the way our society seems to be heading without question. So the thing that is in my head right now is what we are sacrificing for the sake of efficiency and productivity, and who we are sacrificing for the sake of efficiency and productivity. And so are we willing to sacrifice the amount of power that AI is going to take in order to be efficient and productive? Are we willing to sacrifice countless people losing their jobs for the sake of efficiency and productivity, when we don't actually know clearly what we are heading for at such a fast rate. We're getting there really efficiently, but I've never heard anyone say where we're getting. And so I would want to question always the decisions we're making. What effect are those decisions having on our most vulnerable? What effect are these decisions having on the humanity of us as human beings? And I don't feel we've really discussed that. And we are just swallowing these things because they work and because they're so good. And I think we need to stop, and I think we need to get this clear.
Moving fast and breaking things, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. I get this lemming picture in my mind. We're going there really fast, but is that such a great idea? I don't know.
So you do think it's diminishing to our sort of humanity?
Absolutely, it is. Has to be. It's diminishing in terms, the practical terms of the jobs that we're losing, but also human beings, if we don't have to do something, we stop doing it. And therefore we stop the capacity to do it. And I mean, this has been happening since, for hundreds of years now as more and more things become mechanized. But now we've got something which won't only take away the need for us to be able to add or take away the need for us to be able, it will also take away so much of the need for us to be creative. And that's almost what worries me most. If AI can produce a decent song, then how long will it be before AI is producing all our songs? And we need, as human beings, to be creative. I'm back to music, but it's not just music. We need to express ourselves in art and in music and in poetry and in writing. And, it's good for who we are. And I don't want that to be taken away from us.
And I think perhaps another diminishing thing that might be keen in your mind, I've recently had the pleasure, by the time this podcast comes out, the article will be out, I've recently had the pleasure of interviewing Orange Sky, the local service, helping the laundering for homelessness. Yeah. And it's when I was composing the article, I had really sort of mixed feelings, because on the one hand, I wanted to really celebrate and really go, yes, this is excellent, I love this, great. But even between myself and the interviewer, there was this sort of, why does this demand exist? Yeah. And I'm sure you've noticed, as I have, the marked uptick in homelessness or rough sleeping in Dunedin. Is the church quite concerned about this and sort of help to the needy, the biblical needy, putting out a hand?
So, we're doing what we can in terms of establishing social housing. One of our problems is we actually don't have much money to play around with, so which is why we probably do most stuff on the one-to-one level. But where we can, where we have properties, we're trying to work out how we can add to the bank of social housing and in that way reduce homelessness. Our Friday Light services, originally a lot of the homeless people were coming along to that as well. But as to the just thinking about Orange Sky helping the people who are homeless, I remember years ago I had some time in India, and I would go along to one of Mother Teresa's homes for the dying in the morning. And the group I was over there with were quite critical of Mother Teresa. And I was saying, she's just the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff and we need to be at the top of the cliff stopping people falling off. Absolutely we do. But as long as there's no one at the top, there still need to be ambulances picking them up down the bottom. And so, I think we desperately need wonderful people like them. And we need the people at the top. And one of the things I think, one of the things the church needs to be doing in this area, not just the practical stuff, but we also need to be fighting against the mentality that people who are on the street deserve to be there. And you would have caught, you just look up any comments after an article about homelessness, they'll be full of comments, people saying it's their fault, they should be able to do something about it. Because if we can dehumanize them, then we don't need to feel guilty about them or do anything about it. And so that's, I think, another way we need to be speaking out you know.
I can never quite understand, though, that sort of response. But even sitting here, I think to myself, it's such a gut-wrenching. It is such a gut-wrenching, guilty thing, and you feel so much. It is probably just a defence mechanism where they nastily just they thrash away.
Yeah,
understandable, but
if they deserve it, then I don't need to do anything about it.
Then I can stop thinking. I can put it out of mind, but not a way to solve society's ills to help the needy.
But it solves me at the moment, you know, which is kind of indeed. Yeah.
Speaking of ambulances and hills and people at the top.
What are you going to throw at me this time?
I'm doing the gesture too, which is
what's coming? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long you're going to be in the role. No one knows, as you said, sort of like God sends us bits and bobs. But what are your ambitions in this role that God has chosen you for? What are the things you want to accomplish?
Yeah. Boy, that's a horrible question because every organisation wants a strategic plan because it gives us the illusion of control. You know, I want, it is going to sound very, very simple, but it is very simple. I want more people to discover that God loves them. And I want more people to discover the hope and the purpose that comes from the knowledge of the closeness of God, of being found by God. You know, there's so many people at the moment who want to be recognised, want to be seen, want to be found, want to work out their identity. And we have a God who has come to find them. So that isn't at all what you were asking. You know, I think you wanted me to have a set of goals up there. But, you know, my goal is that, and whatever we can do to try and make that happen, that's what I want to do. But that will be different, you know, in every community that's going to be different. So it is an impossible question to answer.
Fair enough.
I don't have a, you know, we're going to build this many buildings by that date and we're going to do, you know,
No,
it doesn't work that way.
Absolutely understandable. Asking material questions of the spiritual leader.
Well, see, that's the problem because it is material stuff as well. But because we're material beings and we're dealing with material people. But it is, it's the core of it all.
I know I'm quite lucky as a university student because I've done a few sort of extracurricular volunteer stuff. So I have more people I know who aren't sort of young across the age groups. So I know a lot of, from the young to the old, I'd term them the casual faithful. They don't attend church mega frequently, but they are faithful. And the thing that I'm constantly hearing from them is they sort of turn on the telly and see the horrible news, and it does really. They're very quiet individuals, but it does gut them. And I think one of the questions they wanted me to ask you was essentially, but you watch the telly like everyone else. You're a material being like anyone else. How do you keep the hope alive in yourself?
Yeah, I know. It's well, that's interesting because I thought what you were going to do was bring out the question, which has, you know, been a problem for about 4,000 years, of if God's love, why does this happen?
Oh,
yeah, exactly. Let's tackle the hope one first. I think with anyone from one of the Judeo-Christian Islamic religions, we believe quite strongly that we're not chess pieces on a board that some figure is moving, but on the other hand, neither are we alone. And therefore, you can hope because you're free to act and make a difference, but you're also not doing it alone. You know, there also is this underlying purpose working through. And, and we believe that the purpose will lead to love in the end. But along the way, there's the suffering. And, that is something we have to mourn and we have to fight. But at no point would we think that suffering was something that God was wanting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on bringing it up. I'm not. It's the Almey Alternative.
Yeah.
I'll leave the cookie cutter gotcha questions to other people.
Yeah.
But what is your answer to that question? Because for me, it's not terribly complicated. You might have a different perspective, but the idea that God gives us free will.
Yeah,
there
exactly.
is a through line. There is an end point. There is ultimately good and hope, but there is still evil in the world.
Yeah.
What is your sort of answer when people put that to you?
Well, I think the first thing to say is when people are suffering, they don't need an answer. They need comfort. They need love. They need, and I guess I would say that love's at the centre of it for me. That if God is behind existence, which I believe God is, then God is love, and therefore love has to be part of this creation. And we couldn't love if we weren't free. However much some people might want to marry the AI companions. The AI companions are actually not loving them. I know. Anyway, but so love requires freedom, and therefore requires the ability for people not to love. And so much of the horrors of our world, come from that. You've also then, as soon as you say that, people bring up, how about earthquakes and how about volcanoes? And, then you've got the freedom of the world itself as well. The tectonic plates need to shift, and we've just built an entire country on top of one. If an earthquake goes, that's the freedom of the world. And it's a tragedy. But, it's not it's not God deciding he's going to move this in order to kill a whole lot of people.
Yeah, he's not up in the clouds with like a few buttons.
Exactly. Yeah, let's zap this one over here now. Yeah, exactly.
We're coming to the flipper end of the interview, but we've still got some time. So let's figure this out.
Yeah.
What do you think is an underappreciated part of Anglicanism? Something that people don't sort of understand about it, but you think that they should understand about it? Perhaps nice. A misunderstanding about it.
Misunderstanding about it. Well, I think in New Zealand, it is no longer an English church. I mean, this is a kind of not quite a surface level thing, but I know it can. Some people, particularly, probably not your generation, but the older generations probably still think of it as an English church. In New Zealand, it is as embedded in the people in the country as it knows how to be. I don't know if you know about our tikanga, our three tikanga structure.
I'm vaguely aware.
Yeah.
There's what, like is there a Maori Anglican church in the Pacifica?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've tried to do the impossible and have three distinct, independent, and yet completely intertwined strands. We call them tikanga Māori, tikanga Pacifica, tikanga Pākehā, and each has its own bishops and they run their own services, but anyone can go to any service. So I belonged to a tikanga Māori church for a couple of years, but we joined together in what we call a general synod, and there's a lot of things that we share as well, and we are one church, but we have these three expressions, and I think that's an amazingly brave thing to do. Living in the Northern Territory for a while and seeing the disastrous effects of a people when the country had swung between apartheid and assimilation and back again a number of times. I just find this an incredibly brave way of trying to do neither. Yeah.
Is it is it unique in the world?
It is.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's another way in which we are leading the way. And it's a lot of other places are very intrigued about it. It's not easy. There's always ongoing discussion to try and make sure this thing is working. But yeah, I think it's a very brave and good thing to be doing.
Fantastic. We're coming to our very last question of the
Okay.
Almey Alternative.
All right,
we've got a solid minute, and it's very simple. I always end it like this.
Oh, that's nice.
What's your final, just 1 minute of time, message to the lovely listeners of the Almey Alternative?
That's almost the hardest one of the lot, having it open. If you are still listening, well done.
I'll have you know.
I've been doing more talking than you have here. But yeah, well done. And I would say if you are still listening, then you're obviously someone who is thinking deeply. And I am pleased about that, because I think anyone who thinks deeply will eventually stumble over God.
Fantastic. It's been an absolute delight. The brain matter is going. Thank you very much for coming. We'll get some fresh air after this. Thank you very much for coming on, Bishop.
Okay. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you on. Yeah,
it was good.
Fantastic. Cheers. Right, there we go. Gad, what an enigma. Every day the horizon of our imagination grows. I can't wait for tomorrow. You can find more episodes of the Almey Alternative on oar.org.nz, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. See you soon, dear listeners.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.